I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And this is Blackstone Wielder by the band Candlemass. This is for
the Epic Underground.
The EU, the Epic Underground. They are an alliance that they specialize in epically underground songs.
You must be wondering, what is an alliance?
An alliance.
Where do they congregate?
Here's the issue, dear listener. Most reaction channels, pretty much all other reaction channels, listen to the song and cut it up every 20-30 seconds or so. By the way, continue to support other reaction channels. Very, very important. Like, share, comment, subscribe.
You would never catch me saying that. I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't think about it. I don't care. Go to Alex Hefner. I think he's interesting, but past that, I wouldn't say it.
You will notice with Vin and Sori that we never cut the song up in the middle. There's a reason why. The reason the other reaction channels cut it up is because what happens is you will probably see at the beginning of this video and every other video an ad. Either a horrible Biden ad or a horrible Trump ad, neither of which we support. But what happens is that Google gets a cut of the ad revenue, and then you get a cut of the ad revenue. Well, when you...
Hey, this copyright claim looks different. You might want to check into that.
It's okay. It's good. I already took care of it.
Okay.
Speaking of which, when you play the song all the way through, it alerts the record label of whatever band you're listening to, and they show up, and you get a nifty message like this from YouTube that basically says, thank you very much for running the commercial. We're going to get our cut, and the record label's getting your cut. So we tried different things. By the time we figured out an alternative, we were like 5,000 deep. Our audience was like, nope. We like the format, start to finish, do it that way. So we capitulated, listened to the audience. But then somebody said, hey, why don't you open up a Patreon? So Patreon opened up, $1 at the gate gets you into the portal. And, you know, if you believe that what we're offering is cool, then you go and do a Patreon. You get to pull your points together. You get shirts, you get this, you get that, you get exclusive content. In the next 24 to 48 hours, I'm going to try to get up the first 34 seconds of our song that we're currently working with our super secret band. All that jazz. You also get hooked up. You get hooked up into the what do you call it? What do you call that thing? Discord server.
Discord, and there's all kinds of things on there. They've got
really
Minecraft
cool
and D&D.
A lot of really cool stuff. And by the way, shout out to Shane and all of our new patrons. We appreciate the heck out of you, wonderful, beautiful people. Brandon, Eric. Blood Rain.
Yeah.
All you awesome, beautiful Eva.
Yeah, when you sign up to Patreon, you don't actually have to put your name. You can put other information.
Yeah.
And then that's what shows up in our thank you video at the end. Whatever information you put.
And of course, the mighty Megatalica. All right, let's do it.
Here we go. Wow. Hey, what year do you think this song came out?
94.
Do you already know?
Well, I always look at the date. Was it 94?
No.
What was it?
86.
Oh.
This doesn't sound like it's that old, right?
No.
Look,
it does
1986.
not. It doesn't sound dated at all.
No.
And it definitely doesn't sound like an 80s song.
No. I always look at it. 94. Okay. First of all, I really like the sound of this one start like right at the beginning.
Yeah, it was very, you know, it started off a certain way. It's very doomy. I thought they were going to be a black metal type of.
Oh, I did too. I thought we were looking.
And I'm not disappointed. I mean, it was just surprising. The song went a bunch of different places.
I was very happy.
Lyrically, it's
like
extremely interesting.
Very yeah. Because at one point I was like, wait, did they trick us? This is a Christian band? Because I never liked the Christian bands, and I liked this one from the beginning. But then as it passed, I was like, well,
I don't think Candlemass is a Christian band. I think they're a Swedish doom metal band established in 1984. Established by band leader Leif Edling and drummer Mats Ekström.
Well, as it progressed, it didn't sound like
they're more doomy. They're like doom metal, but
But what?
Well, I'm kind of like trying to figure out what they're actually trying to say here, because it's very interesting stuff.
Did I get the story? Like, there was basically, well, they were talking about the star in Bethlehem, and then the Magi traveling to see the birth of Jesus.
Right.
And when he gets there, he kneels before Jesus, and he gives him a black stone, I think, and he basically tells him to wield it well because he didn't wield it well long ago. And so I'm not sure. Maybe it went into what he did long ago with it. I don't really.
Right. Maybe they're presenting like an alternate sort of universe or story as to why Christ was so powerful. That they had this black stone and it gave you these powers to do X, Y, and Z. So when the Magi show up, they give Jesus the black stone and say, "Do right with it," you know, because I didn't, you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this word here, the second to last word, condemned, I don't know if it means commanded or if it means condemned. See what I'm saying? I'm not. You see the second to last line where it says
both. I think that they made the word, and I think that they're saying they're commanded, but in having to praise God forever, it's a damnation. Like, that's what made me say, "Oh, it's not." I don't think that's a Christian band.
You think that that's?
That's what I thought they were.
No, okay, so here it says condemned. So, you know, I go to Lyric Find, it says condemned. Let's see what AZ Lyric.
Yeah, but if it's condemned, that's the same thing. If somebody is condemned, then you've commanded them to be condemned. Like,
well, commanded and condemned are completely different words, though.
Yes, but if you've commanded someone, like, they have to do it, you've been told they had to do it, and if you're condemned, you're stuck in having to be condemned. There's no coming out of it there either. So.
What? I don't understand
Someone is
that.
Condemned.
So here it says condemned. Another passage says commanded. Commanded and condemned are not the same thing.
No, I know they're not the same thing. If I command you to do the house, to clean the house, then you're going to have to clean the house if I'm in a position of authority. And if I condemn you, you're condemned. Like, you're going to, you know, if I condemn you to hell, you're stuck in hell. So either way, whether you've been commanded to be condemned, you're still having to do what you have to do. So I think condemned.
Yeah, we're commanded to.
I think that you could put those two words together and it would still basically mean
play it again. You think they made up the word?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just saying, if they did,
I think these people who are like tracing the lyrics are having a hard time with their accent.
Yeah. I mean,
it's so crazy. Some people say condemned. Some people says command.
Here, you're better finding it. I literally didn't even hear him say the word.
I'm just gonna go with condemned to praise God forever till his son was born to deliver. So I'm just gonna go there. Very, very.
So inaudible. That's so funny.
Yeah. It's inaudible and it's his thing. So the the genius lyricist just basically said, let's just put them together. Condemned. Okay.
Did you see that
What?
meme floating around? Jesus is on the cross, and there's this white guy standing
Oh, he
there.
he shouldn't have broke the law.
Yeah, he should have broke the law.
Yeah. I know a lot of people that would have said that during that.
Yeah,
period.
for sure.
For all.
Okay, anyway.
They wielded the black stone with evil, and their evil was cast back on them. Condemned to praise God forever till his son was born to deliver. So, Jesus is here to deliver you from having to praise God forever.
I know, that's why I was confused a little at the end there, because...
Like I said, this is like an alternate universe type of thing. Like, because it's okay, so...
Because they gave him gold, frankincense, and myrrh, not a black stone.
Well, the Babylonian, so this is very interesting. So for example, in the middle of, don't get offended my Muslim friends, but in the middle of the Kaaba, there's a black stone. And
That's what I kept thinking about.
And it's a sacred stone, and the Muslims on Hajj, they kiss the black stone. And there's a very interesting conversation that Umar ibn al-Khattab has with the black stone. He says, basically, he says to the black stone, if it weren't for Rasulullah saying whatever, I would have no regard for you. That's what he says to this black stone, because obviously in Islam there's monotheism and yada yada yada. And so Umar ibn al-Khattab, it's like, if it wasn't for Muhammad saying that you're a sacred stone, I would have no, you know, I could care less.
It's so funny. He was talking to the stone?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I understand his point. So, and that kind of region, you know, Mesopotamia, I mean, it's not exactly Saudi Arabia, but in Mesopotamian ancient Near Eastern, this is actually one of the things that separates Judaism or the Israelite cult from a lot of the surrounding religions of the time. There was no sacred stone. As a matter of fact, there was no sacred anything. Their God was invisible. And that was something that was a vast sort of break. And there was no, focal point where this particular thing symbolized God. Whereas, you know, even the Ark of the Covenant was basically the seat of God. But the Ark of the Covenant itself wasn't God or even a representation of God. It was, you know, the idea is that Yahweh is sitting enthroned between the cherubim.
Right.
And the cherubim were, you know, in heaven. And so, you know, the presence of Yahweh was attached to it, but it didn't symbolize Yahweh. It symbolized his throne, but it didn't symbolize him. They never bowed down and worshipped it or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's one of the things that separates Israelite religion, but it's very interesting that in Islam it's a black stone that a lot of people speculate was a meteor. They say it wasn't a fragment of a meteor. They say, you know, it's a whatever. Okay, fine. I mean,
It's a what?
It's a divine thing from Allah. You know, like, and that was around during the period of Jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah is a period before Muhammad got his revelation. So that's, if I was a Muslim, that would bother me. And it seemed to be bothering Umar ibn al-Khattab, because like this is something that was happening during the days of paganism. Before Islam was revealed to Muhammad. So we don't have the sort of background about black stones and why those would be significant, because we come from a tradition of obviously the Israelite cult. But that's our you know, theological, intellectual history. So we don't understand the significance of it, but you know, this would probably make a lot more sense to an Islamic person, you know, than. But yeah, the black stone is right there.
Yeah, I think though that even from the beginning of our roots, if you bring it back, if you trace it back to Judaism and you say God was there. Remember when God divided everything up and he said Israel is going to be mine? Like he divided up the nations between the gods, 11. I guess, yeah. And then he was the one that was leading them, and they were begging him for a king. Like they wanted a physical person, they wanted a representation there, and they wanted that, and he gave it to them. You know what I mean? So I think that it's kind of like in us to want
a physical
something. I remember, this is kind of weird, but I remember when I was a kid, So I started babysitting when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I was really, really, really scared when I would babysit at other people's houses. I hated it. I was scared because I was afraid somebody was going to break in. I was like, what if somebody shows up? Having to watch the kids late at night. What if something happens? What if the kid chokes? I had all these worries. I think I've always struggled with anxiety, and it was just not diagnosed. So, I was there and I was watching the kids, and my mom had given me this little, she had gone to Florida. She would periodically go to Florida for like 2 weeks, which to me was like the end of the world, having my mom go for 2 weeks and we weren't with her.
Really?
And it was really, really, really scary. I would get like really high anxiety when mom was going to be leaving, when she would leave on the plane, and the whole time she was gone, I was just scared. So anyway, she had come back one time and she brought this little bunny. I actually wish I still had it. I had it when I moved in here, but I don't know what happened to it. So it was like this little puffy body, and it had beads in it, and then there was like this cute little head, and then the 2 little ears, but it only stood like this big. But it was like, for me, like, it was from mom, and just from mom, because mom's the one that went to Florida. And so that thing was super special to me. And I would take it with me when I would go babysitting and everything. And I knew that if like adults knew that I was like this scared, or that I was like carrying this little bunny with me to help me feel safer, that they would be like, I don't know if she can handle this job. So I never breathed a word to everyone, because I always liked it when people thought that I was like, I had it together and I was strong and whatever. So I hid that from everybody. But I remember thinking, like, it would be really cool, like, because I would pray, but I wanted like to physically see God. Like, I'm like, so I'm praying when I'm in these people's homes, and I'm praying that everything's gonna be okay, and that I always was scared that the dad was gonna come home without the mom. And so anyway, so I'm like, okay, I would pray a lot when I was in those situations. And then I started being like, well, if I could kind of pretend that the bunny was like God, then then God can like physically be there with me.
That's interesting.
And I took it and I set it on the top of my jewelry box, and I was sitting on the ground, and I was like, not the ground, the floor, and I was looking up at the bunny, and I was like, I started like praying, but I was looking at the bunny, and then I immediately felt like, nope, this isn't good. You can't do that, because it wasn't, I felt like that thing was becoming the God instead of God beyond it, because God can't be confined by a little tiny bunny. So I never did that again. I stopped doing that, and I left the bunny behind.
Yeah, Dorian used to have this little cross like thing, and then when he was scared, he used to set it up in his room, and it used to help him. Mm-hmm. Like he would, which of course his mother at the time had a Catholic background, so she gave him this little thing, and then he would I don't know if he would pray to it, but even though I'm saying the Israelite, the ancient Israelite cult didn't have iconography, they didn't like it. They didn't like not having a physical, it's Deuteronomy 4. You therefore watch yourselves very carefully, since you saw no form on the day that the Lord spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire. So God is saying, when I met with you guys at Mount Sinai, you didn't see any form or anything like that, so don't make any. They struggled mightily with that, and they were the only at the time A&E religion that didn't have iconography. The Canaanites did, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, everybody did. But they didn't, and they had a very hard time with it. The Egyptians had Pharaoh as the incarnation, as the physical incarnation of. So it was very, very, very difficult for them, and it's almost as if God says, okay, and then you have the incarnation of Jesus. Now you do have an actual physical, corporeal sort of manifestation, hypostasis of God, of the eternal, uncreated world, and then the eternal, uncreated, non-physical world is melded with the, temporal, created physical world in Jesus, in both of them, and so there you have it. But
well, it's crazy because you think, like, oh, well, it would be cool if we could have like a form of our God to kind of like just set over there, and then when you see that, you're reminded, or like you go into the Chinese restaurant and they have a little Buddha sitting there and they're putting the food there for it and stuff like that. And that there's this reminder, when they walk into their restaurant in the morning, like feed Buddha, like put the incense in there and stuff like that. But the reason that is so wildly important for us not to get hooked up on in that is because here you have, perfectly good food that's being set in front of something made of stone, when human beings were created to be those representations. And so when we see other human beings, it's supposed to stir in us whatever I do for somebody else, that's me doing it for my God. So then you feed the poor, you take care of the people around you, and you don't do it because you're like, I have to do this, but it's like you want to. And so I think that when we end up switching and it becomes about like a thing, we miss all the people around us.
That's a really, really, and not to say that because I know immediately somebody's going to go, are you saying that Buddhists don't help people? That's not what we're saying.
No.
What we're saying is that the religious and the sinful nature of man is such that even though that is not the intention of having the statue and the images, that many times when that interfaces with the sinful nature, people can walk past a homeless person, but feed the Buddha and feel like they're fulfilling their obligation. Mm-hmm. The concept of the image of God is massively so important, because you're right. Part of, I talk about the imago Dei a lot, or the image of God a lot, which that gives you your dignity and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. However, when it comes to iconography, it's also a very, very interesting point, which is namely that we are, for lack of a better word, the walking statues or the walking icons of God. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Garden of Eden, especially if you take the certain hypotheses as far as Genesis goes, there's an idea that there was a priestly author in Genesis. So, which means that the Garden of Eden is being styled as a temple. Mm-hmm. And then what do you put in the temple? Obviously the image of the gods you put it in the center of the temple, and sure enough, what do you have? You have Adam and Eve. They're placed in the middle of the temple. They're the images. Mm-hmm. They're the images of God.
Because doesn't it say that Eden was placed in the center of the garden or something like that?
Yeah, and obviously when Solomon makes the temple, there's all this garden imagery, there's angels, there's rivers in it, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Obviously harkening back, and this is not just exclusive to the Israelite cult. All the A&E temples, almost without exception, pre and post Solomonic temple, have garden imagery in it, which, I subscribe to the idea of collective consciousness, that we all knew what we lost and we're all trying to get back in there. Mm-hmm. And so the difference, though, between the Israelite cult and their temple and the other A&E was that the A&E, they would put the temple of the gods in the center of the images of their gods in the center of the temple. Yep. The Israelites did not.
Yep.
And yeah, you're right. The idea is that, the people in the temple and doing the service, they are the images of the gods. And then you walk outside and you see your fellow Israelite, they're the images of the gods. And that has obvious ethical and moral implications, as we were talking about yesterday with the fireside. Yeah, lots of things, like from wearing a mask to, obeying the speed limit. All of that is encompassed around that idea. But the one of the reasons that I subscribe to the Bible is that the Israelites didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I go. They came up with certain, central religious ideas that were contrary to human nature, and that the people couldn't really hold to after a while. And I think that actual rule by God actually sets up the incarnation, because not having that because we're creating the physical world, so not having a physical touch point was such a thing that they struggled with from start to finish, that it sets up Jesus as a perfect solution to that problem, because now you have a physical manifestation that you can actually worship. Hey!
Yeah, you know what? Maybe that's part of why he came back physically after his resurrection.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not just a spirit.
Yeah.
Flesh and blood.
Yeah.
Staying this way.
So these Magi, it's really interesting, because what they're saying here isn't that Jesus is a divine being. What they're saying is he had this sort of magical stone that was, infused with all these powers from these wizards, the previous wielders of the stone. They were all bad. They all abused the power, and it's kind of the stone kind of functions as almost like the One Ring in Lord of the Rings, where you've got this infinite source of power, but then it corrupts you because you were already a corrupt person. But then Jesus is a good person, so he was always using that secret power as for good. Which obviously, even in this universe, Jesus would still be bad because he's claiming that he's God. He's not saying I have the power because I have some secret stone. He's saying I have the power because I'm a divine being.
Right.
He clearly claims to be a divine being in Matthew chapter 26, John 5, etc., etc. That's obvious. As well as in Mark, Bart Ehrman, you weirdo. So, it's clear that this is a really, really interesting thing to think about, especially when you look at the background of what was going on. I listened to one of my favorite sermons of all time was from John MacArthur, and it was basically how did the Magi know to even look for Jesus and yada yada yada. I'm like, yeah, and then of course he talked about Daniel. Because remember, the Babylonian exile, the Magi were from Babylon. Yeah. They were Babylonians. And Daniel was there, and so Daniel was obviously a key figure in their history. And you remember when Nebuchadnezzar had these dreams, it would say the satraps, the magicians, Magi. Yeah. That's the Magi. It's them. That's where we get the term from. So So
are you saying that because Daniel was there, he influenced their history as to what they should look for in the future? Because he was so accurate. Like there was times where the other Magi didn't have a clue what was going on because obviously the message was coming from Daniel's God. And
Correct.
So when that would happen, Daniel would come and do the interpretation of what was going on, and it happened. It would whatever it was that was the message, it would happen. So that would make his work very influential to them. Yeah,
and they did astrology, astronomy, that type of thing, and so you could see the combination of that influence. And the influence worked both ways. The Babylonians obviously influenced Israelite religion. That's clearly chronicled in Jeremiah and Ezekiel. And here you have, I'm not sure if the Magi, even in the New Testament, they didn't say he's the Messiah, he's going to die for our sins. It was just sort of like, this is a very special kid, chosen one type of thing, and we've come to whatever. So it seems that there was sort of that syncretism between Babylonian astrology and Israelite religion that brought them to to Jesus. Yeah. So it's just it was probably one of my favorite sermons of all time, because it was like, I was like, holy crap, I didn't think, because I used to read that sermon like, that's so random. Yeah. I just thought it was so random, and it was one of those things I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And it made no logical sense to me why those people would be interested in it.
Well, they always switched the story for us, and they didn't tell us that they would say the Magi were rich men. Right. So it was, there was rich people that came to Jesus, and none of that seemed surprising to me. When I got older and I realized that the Magi were actually magicians and they studied astrology, which in my household was like, don't even have a conversation, nothing. So I think that's why they made it look like, well, they were just rich guys that came. Yeah. And then when I realized, well, what were these rich guys doing studying the stars?
Correct.
We're not supposed to do that.
Correct. And then on top of that, God puts the thing up there for them because he knows that they're looking for it, which is completely antithetical to most Christians.
And didn't God give them some kind of wisdom to not go back a certain way because they die? Yeah. So like here you have these magicians, they're reading the stars, but God's still talking to them.
100%.
It's just a very confusing thing for me to process.
Yeah, that's why I say that, there's only one way to God, and that's Jesus, but there's multiple ways to Jesus.
Yeah, I see what.
And here are these Magi who didn't. Of course, you're supposed to see the irony in the New Testament, because you've got Herod and you've got the Pharisees and all these people who had access to the pure truth, which is the OT Israelite religion that was prophesying this, and Daniel and from the day of the rebuilding of the temple, there was all this messianic expectation, and they completely miss it, or they try to destroy it, Herod. Meanwhile, you've got these Magi that only had basically Daniel, didn't have a lot of background in the Old Testament, but the little that they had, then God worked with them with their astrology and all, which of course, in Genesis 1, we're told that the stars are for times, signs, and seasons is what it says. It specifically says that. So, you know, it's just one of those things where your version of Christianity that is this like exclusive in the sense that unless you're only reading the Bible, you can never get to the truth of who Jesus is. I just don't think it's true. You know, we're watching that Apocalyptica movie a couple days ago. It was just absolutely horrifying movie about how horrific human nature is. You know, with I think it was Aztec people. Of course, you know, somebody.
Oh, I didn't know what the name of it was.
Yeah, well, I was very fascinated with the Aztecs namely because of the whole human sacrifice heart thing in Magi. I was like, holy crap! My social studies teacher in the 6th grade, she was really good at horrible, but really good at recounting the story. But it was just really like from a theological perspective, and you could hear these people on both sides, you know, these savages, you know, whatever. And somebody said it's historically inaccurate, and I'm probably sure that it is. But throughout the movie, you see both sides, either the aggressive tribe the Aztecs that go around slaughtering people, and then the regular, basically peace-loving villagers who the Aztecs are victimizing. You could see them in different times praying. You know, like one moment they pray to a feminine goddess, Ixti something, and then another time they once I'm done with my Marxist brainwashing, my self-Marxist brainwashing, I'm probably gonna go into some Aztecian stuff. But it was just seeing these people cry out to God in their moments of need and despair and things of that nature. And you know, I don't, like I said, Jesus is the only way to God, but I think there are multiple ways to Jesus is the issue. And then, of course, at the end of the movie, I don't want to give a spoiler. Okay, if you're about to watch Apocalyptica, stop right here because I'm about to give a spoiler. At the end of the movie, you see, you know, basically this guy's running for his life. He finally makes it out. He escapes, and then there's like a party of 9 people went after him, and they all died. And there's only 2 people left, and all 3 of them hit the shore. So the guy they're chasing, and then the two Aztecian, you know, savages or whatever who are chasing him, all of them hit the shore, and then they look, and they're looking at something, and you don't know what they're looking at, and then the camera pans off, and sure enough, it's the Europeans. And then you've got some monks with crosses and all this stuff, and like, you know, historically what happened after that. It's just very, very fascinating, and it's like, it's you know, what God, you know, as a Christian, it looks to me like when I read the Old and New Testament that God works with people from where they are. So like, you're a Babylonian, you don't have enough, you know, whatever, you're a big person looking into the sky. Okay, let's do it that way. And I'm sure those people were saved, whatever that means. But they did not have all the theology and all the rest of it. You know, they just had a desire to. Yeah. I don't think they knew that this is God in the flesh and the Logos who created everything and yada yada yada. Like, I think God works with people where they are.
Paul went to visit this. I mean, you can fill in the blanks. Paul went to visit this place, and they had like this. Yeah, they had this altar that was set up, and it was to the unknown God.
Right.
And so he basically said, you have been worshiping what you don't know, and now let me explain to you who he is.
Right, what you worship in ignorance of. Yeah.
So, he didn't say, you were not worshiping all this time.
Yeah.
He just tells me.
Say you worship in ignorance.
Yeah, let me drop some knowledge on you.
And then Paul said in times of ignorance, God basically...
King James says he winked at it.
God winked at it, but now...
now it's time to know.
Now he's coming, and that's the difference, right? That's why I always tell people. People say, "What about the guy in the jungle?" And I would say, everybody that truly wants God will have him. The issue is we have to want God on God's terms. We don't get to set the terms of the relationship. He's God, and so whatever light we're given is the light that we're going to be held responsible for. And so Paul goes up there, and there were a couple people that quote converted because of Paul's speech, and there were those that didn't. So anybody who was genuinely worshiping the unknown God was already in a sort of right relationship with God on the way to more revelation. And those who were not worshiping the unknown God in true faith then would have rejected the message. So that's why anytime anybody asks me that question about the guy in the jungle, I always answer by saying anybody who truly wants God will have it. Because if you truly want God, then you're going to react to more and more of God's revelation on God's terms and not your own.
Right.
Just really, really interesting. This song, I actually really like this song because of the. It's just different. It's not one of these. I'm going to be blasphemous to be blasphemous. Sometimes that's whatever. I get it. This is sort of like a really interesting retelling. And the other thing is another one of the books I'm reading right now is. It's a very interesting retelling of certain staples in Western history, Western stories, and so it's a very interesting book. I'm not gonna name it because Ben Webb will go and tell us. Will spoil it for us, I'm sure. Shout out to Ben Webb. Okay, that's all I got. What do you get, song?
I really liked it. It's really high 9 for me. Probably 9.8, 9.9.
Solid 9.7 for me. I really liked it. Very thought-provoking song.
Well, thank you, Epic Underground.
Shout out to Epic
for your
Underground.
contributions.
Very nice.
We like your song. Sorry, out.
Gone.